People always ask me what it's like to be rich and have FU money. What it really buys you most is time. That's actually what it really buys you, because money is really a claim on labor. That's what it is. So if you have to go to work every day for money because you have to pay for something, that's a claim on your time. That's what it really is. So when you don't have that anymore, there's quite a bit of freedom. It's obviously financial freedom, but it's just pure freedom. To be able to go work out, go spend time with people you love, go hang out, go play golf, go travel. Then, of course, sitting on a beach also becomes kind of boring. A lot of people do it. They look for it like months away for 2 weeks. But it's nice to know that you can go anytime, whenever you want. Financial freedom is not having to worry about where your money's coming from and making it work for you. So the whole point of money is to actually invest it so that it is making money for you while you're sleeping or awake or whatever. The big issue is generational wealth, passing it on to other people. So what happens a lot of times, like somebody wins the lottery, or maybe they get a welfare check, and I'm not banging on welfare because it's certainly needed in this country in many, many things. But what happens is when you give somebody money, even your kids, then all of a sudden they don't appreciate it. They don't appreciate not having it. And that fire inside of them starts to dim down because they expect it. And, a lot of people call that entitlement, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is that's actually the biggest problem for people that have a lot of money, is because most people that I know at least are self-made. There's three kinds of people with money. The first ones are what we call W-2s. So those would be high-paid corporate jobs, and maybe they have a piece of some company, but they're really not in control of their outcome, their financial future. Now, they can make good decisions around that, but they're really just employed by somebody else. Who you want to be is the business owner, and that typically is oftentimes a self-made person. And that's the person that's going to make the most. That's actually what you want to be. And then the third one gets no respect, and that's what I call lucky sperm. That is the son of or the daughter of, somebody that's wealthy or got passed over. I'm not saying that those people can't do something with that money, but generally what they do is they stop working and they start living off of it. And then soon they run out. And it's precisely why people that win the lottery go out and buy houses and cars and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. Soon they run out of money, or they've invested it poorly because they don't know the right question to ask, the right people to invest it with, and the right things to do in order to have that money return more money. So the whole game is to make money and then invest it correctly and make that money work for you to provide a lifestyle that you want. So the whole goal always is never to touch the actual money itself. Only play with the money that's made from that money. So you never want to dig into your base money. You always want to just have a lifestyle that's based on what that money makes. That way you're never eroding the base. So there's been several benchmarks for me as I was a young man. The first number was just merely covering my operational expenses. And at the time, of course this is going way back, that was about $3,000 a month. So all I needed was about $3,000 a month in passive income to be able to cover my monthly expenses. So at that point, you are technically financially free. So if that's not coming from a paycheck, let's say, and it's coming from some other sources, maybe a small business or maybe some investments or maybe a carried interest that you started with a business or some real estate or something like that, if that money's coming in, then you are financially free. You can continue to work if you love what you do. That's not a problem. Nobody's ever saying you shouldn't work. What they're saying is you just don't want to be tied to that work. You don't want to have to be reliant on that work. The worst cases, if you think about it, are like, let's say, a doctor or a CPA or a lawyer or even a realtor. They're basically working for tips and commissions. Think about it. A realtor is transactional. They list something, they sell something, they get a one-time hit like a drug addict, and then it's gone until the next thing. And so they're constantly on this treadmill to try to do deals. And so what happens is, as your lifestyle gets bigger and you want nice cars like the Speedster or a jet like we're on now that my partner Ross and I own together, When you get to those things, then your bar just moves. Then it goes to 10 grand a month. Then it goes to 20 grand a month. Then it goes to 100 grand a month. One thing I never do is I never go in debt unless I have a way to pay for that. So for me, it's rental property. So we have 10,000 tenants paying us each and every month, and we have millions of dollars of cash flow coming in each and every month. So that allows us to do all kinds of cool stuff. So there's different stages of wealth, and there's different stages of people that make money. So the first stage, of course, is just saving, putting money away, and covering your expenses. The next stage, which you guys probably see a lot, especially on YouTube and Instagram and all that, are the folks that are buying these cars and renting jets. That's kind of the next stage. Well, that's not sustainable. You know, that's good for social media. But when you actually buy a jet and you actually have the operational cost for the pilot, let's say, who's right in front of me here, and all the costs of the jet, including fuel and all that kind of stuff, you know, you really need to have $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a month coming in just to cover the jet. The actual purchase of a jet is actually not as important as the monthly operating cost of that jet. So you can buy a jet for, say, 10 million bucks, and you can finance it. So you can put $1 million or $2 million down if you want it. But to run that jet is going to be $50,000, $60,000 a month. So you have to be in a position to have a company pay for that, or you pay for that. The right way to pay for that operating cost of a jet, let's say, would be from passive income. The number for people to obtain complete financial freedom varies depending on the individual itself. Some people that are married, let's say, and they both work in corporate jobs, and then they have $2, $3, $4 million, let's say, saved up in net worth, they might say, I'm financially free. There's multiple levels above that. When you start to travel the world and you start to buy jets and you start to go places and go to things that you would want that cost a lot of money, like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 weekends. So those kinds of things cost a lot of money. Like I'm going to the Olympics in August, and it's going to be a very expensive weekend. I'm going to go to a UFC fight in June, and that's going to be a $30,000 or $40,000 weekend when you add up the jets and the tickets and the hotel rooms and all those kinds of things. So there's always a different level of things that you will have. And the way to compensate all of that is just to continue to grow your passive income over a long period of time. Because as I said earlier, what you want is you want your real estate assets or your business assets to kick off enough cash to be able to pay for all of this stuff. You never want to dip into the base money. You always ought to be focused on what that money actually returns. So there's multiple levels of net worth. You're not going to own a jet if you're, let's say, under $10 million in net worth. You're literally still going to fly commercial in most cases, maybe private from time to time, and you're going to be passing that money over to your kids at some point. You have to be well over that into the 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars, even upwards of $100 million. And then when you get to there, what happens? You just buy bigger jets. You can buy jets that can fly over the ocean, those kinds of things. So there's always a bigger game somewhere, always. The major cons of having a lot of money is everybody wants it. So the charities want it, you know, your family wants it, your kids want it, and of course, all kinds of friends always are asking for it to start businesses or even just loans. This happens to me constantly. And all my friends are in the exact scenario. What happens is when you start to make a lot of money, it gets recognized, then people come with their hand out looking for it for some reason. There's always a reason. And then the biggest one, in my opinion, is passing it on to a generation that is not ready to accept it. That's the biggest one. The second generation appreciates the first generation money, but the third generation almost always loses it. If I was to boil it down, it's because the third generation is going to grow up with the second generation who already grew up with wealth. Typically, the first generation grew up with nothing, and so they have a harder work ethic, and they appreciate where they've come from, and they pass it over to the second generation who always grew up with it, and then they have kids, and they never actually got to see some of those core things that the first generation had to do, some of the scrapping it out to make a business work, some of the highs and the lows that could happen from building a company. They never saw that. All they ever saw was the second generation actually had the money and they were raised in that environment. The second generation is entitled, but the third generation is very entitled, and they typically don't have the fire or the work ethic like the first generation. So I know this might seem overwhelming, but I just did a video with my best advice that might help anyone start or scale to $1 billion company. You can watch that here.